After Epic Mickey's critical and commercial success, it was only a matter of time before Disney returned to the twisted realm of Wasteland. Epic Mickey 2, The Power of Two, sheds its allegiance to the Big N and goes multi-platform, bringing with it a slew of new features and co-op play. Does Mickey still have the magic?
Just in the nick of time, Mickey. Wasteland is becoming inert again, and with all the damage from the quake.
Not only that, but the Mad Doctor is back!
Mysterious earthquakes have put the brakes on Wasteland's brief moment of tranquility, and the tunes call upon Mickey and Oswald to once again team up and save the day. Additionally, the Mad Doctor resurfaces and proclaims he's turned over a new leaf. He offers his assistance as a gesture of good faith, but it's obvious he's up to no good.
See what you think as we explore the madness of the Mad Doctor. Roll the tape.
The story in Epic Mickey 2 isn't up to much better. The plot twists are predictable, the narrative meanders too much too often, and the conclusion fails to come close to the originals. You'll still get a kick out of the plentiful Disney references, if that's your thing, but this lighthearted tale is considerably less ambitious than its predecessor.
Hey, what's happening? Look out!
Gosh, that was a doozy of a landing.
Epic Mickey 2 feels more like a remix than a proper sequel, retreading a lot of familiar territory as many of the original game's zones return. The scant new zones are dull and fail to capitalize on their potential, the mundane trek through Autotopia being the most egregious offender.
Oh, this used to be my favorite place to visit, and now look at it.
You had vast, open environments with multiple objectives to tackle in the first game, but even those returning zones feel smaller due to their new fragmented structure. With a good deal less exploration involved, levels feel more like single-minded obstacle courses. The one bright side to this is that you can get around much faster, and there's less backtracking. The game relies on the original's paint and thinner mechanics that allow you to alter the world, but they're not as well integrated this time around. Most tasks can be completed in one of two fashions, but the solutions aren't always clearly telegraphed, and it's way too easy to trigger an unintended consequence. Not that it ultimately matters. Unlike the original game, it rarely feels like your decisions have any significant impact on your progression. The Power of Two's strongest suit is its plethora of side quests, and it does a good job of tracking them and keeping your objectives clear. However, the quest interface is quite cumbersome, and you'll have to thumb through one too many screens to figure out what to do at times. The rewards attached to these excursions are largely throwaways too, with the exception of the new costumes you can unlock. Ultimately, the biggest deal breaker is your new partner Oswald. When playing solo, the AI-controlled rabbit is a complete thorn in your side. Getting him to obey commands or act on contextual cues is a lesson in frustration, and not providing the option to simply control him directly is a huge oversight. You can avoid this headache by playing with a friend, but then you're limited to vertical split-screen co-op. It's easy enough to drop in or out, but the game really begs for online co-op.
Careful!
Epic Mickey 2 is incredibly short if you stick to the storyline, clocking in at well under the 10-hour mark. Since the choices you can make in the game have little consequence, there's not much incentive to come back for a second playthrough.
Sorry, I can't. Oh.
The original Epic Mickey was dogged by dodgy camera work, and the sequel thankfully improves on this. Getting around is much easier now without having to worry about bad angles. Too bad the same can't be said about the jumping mechanics. It's hard to feel completely in control even after hours of play. The physics are also off-kilter at times, which results in a few headaches. The teamwork element is also completely squandered. We already mentioned the problem of getting your AI partner to obey your commands, but even when Oswald is controlled by a human player, team actions don't always work as advertised. Something as simple as trying to grab onto Oswald to glide over gaps is more frustrating than it ought to be. Unless you're playing with the Wii version with motion-controlled aiming, the painting mechanics have some accuracy issues. You're given two different control schemes to pick from. One keeps the reticle locked in a neutral position while you're moving, while the other allows you to move the cursor around a small portion of the screen. Either way, it's an awkward setup, and the act never feels as accurate as it should be. It's also too easy to lose track of the reticle's position. Needless to say, combat isn't one of Mickey's strong points. The game encourages clever use of paint or thinner to tackle enemies, but the poor controls make it hard to enjoy the possibilities. A few new elements are thrown into the mix, like a stealth mechanic that lets you bypass battles, but these segments are tedious. It's usually easier to just brute force your way through them.
I got no clue what happened. I be here, minding me own business, when the people work suddenly went crazy.
Epic Mickey's twisted interpretation of Disney's lost relics is still a sight to behold, but its coat of paint is wearing thin. The new additions to the returning environments aren't exactly visually stunning. The game takes a noticeable performance hit when utilizing the split-screen co-op, and the character models and animations aren't nearly as impressive as before. A lot of familiar tunes return, but aside from a few standouts, the majority of the soundtrack blends into the background, never really leaving its mark.
I wonder who's in charge of these telephone boxes.
Despite the new additions, Epic Mickey 2 feels phoned in. The charm and novelty of the paint mechanics are starting to fade, and it lacks the ambitious decision-making that helped to distinguish the original. What's left is a mediocre platformer, and all its allusions to Disney's rich history can only help so much. It's back to the drawing board for Mickey and Friends.
Doesn't everybody deserve a second chance?